the air with new threats from an old playbook, with our sources late today saying the judge overseeing former President Trump's case has to get extra security, his family too. A gut check on what's real and what's not in these newest claims, these newest attacks, and a live report on the move from Mike Pence that could hurt his former boss, if not politically, then legally. Plus, a bad tornado year is getting even worse tonight, with millions more people now in the path of violent storms. We're on the ground in Arkansas. And is Sweetgreen ripping off Chipotle? The burrito makers say yes because of the salad chain's new chicken bowl, and now Chipotle wants the profits from it. The fast casual fight that could affect your next lunch order later in the show. Plus, in tonight's Newsmaker, I'll go one-on-one with comedian and activist Maz Jobrani on his work to keep Iran's crackdown on female protesters front and center. And the viral reactions from fans of Bud Light because of its new partnership with the trans TikTok star. That's later on in the show. Hey there, I'm Hallie, and right now we've got new details on the new threats against the judge overseeing the case against former President Trump, just a day after that unprecedented arraignment you watched here live in New York City. Here's what multiple sources are telling our team tonight: that Justice Juan and his family are getting threatening calls and emails and letters, unsubstantiated threats that are also being aimed at the Manhattan District Attorney and other officials in his office. All of these threats are being investigated right now. Dozens of them were told recently, not clear what specifically that time frame is. And we're also learning tonight the NYPD and court officers are beefing up security just in case. This new reporting is coming in the aftermath of Donald Trump yet again leaning into personal attacks against the judge, after he and everyone else involved in this case were asked not to say anything that could incite violence. Listen to this.
I have a Trump-hating judge with a Trump-hating wife and family whose daughter worked for Kamala Harris and now receives money from the Biden-Harris campaign, and a lot of that.
Okay, so is that true? Mr. Trump gave no evidence that Justice Rashan or his wife, quote-unquote, hates Mr. Trump. We do know that Rashan oversaw a jury trial when the Trump organization was found guilty of tax fraud, among other charges, leading to $1 million+ fine. It is true that Rashan's daughter runs a digital strategy firm that previously worked for Vice President Kamala Harris's presidential campaign and the Biden-Harris campaign in 2020. But there's no evidence that our team can find that she's worked for them since or is now part of some Biden political operation. Her company did not return requests for comment. Remember, Rashan's overseeing the case in which Mr. Trump faces 34 felony charges in New York, accused of lying about business records tied to a hush money payment ahead of the 2016 election. But that is not the only legal trouble that Donald Trump faces, because in just the last couple of hours, we're learning that his former Vice President Mike Pence will not fight a judge's order to testify in a different investigation, looking at the former president's push to try to overturn the legitimate results of the 2020 election. That is a big deal, and our Laura Jarrett is going to help explain why in just a second. But we want to start tonight outside Mar-a-Lago with Dasha Burns, who's in West Palm Beach, Florida. And Dasha, our new reporting on the threats to Juan Rashan here, the judge in this case, show just how serious and potentially dangerous the stakes are. As the Trump campaign is telling us today, and I'm quoting here from a statement, they say the Constitution guarantees impartial process and free speech. They say President Trump is laying out the facts. Facts matter here.
Yeah, Hallie, I mean, look, this is a pattern that we have seen from the former president over and over and over again. I mean, we can point to a litany of names of prosecutors, judges, federal officials, state officials, local officials that Trump has attacked, that Trump has lashed out at when he has felt like they have undermined him or undercut him or gone after him in any way. But of course, the stakes here are incredibly high for everyone involved. Our Savannah Guthrie asked his lawyer about this earlier today. Take a listen to what he said.
Did you do what the judge asked you to do and advise him to knock it off?
President Trump heard the judge. He's not done anything to try to incite violence.
And of course, while the lawyers are concerned with what this means for the case, Trump is concerned about what this means for the campaign. And this is red meat for the base, Hallie. So I don't expect that he's going to change his tack here anytime soon.
Mr. Trump is getting some new political cover today from allies who have been downplaying this case against him here. Like, for example, Senator Lindsey Graham. Here's what he said today. Listen.
I just think legally this is going to fold like a cheap suit. I mean, There's no way in the world that a normal person would be prosecuted under this theory. You'll never convince me, if it were not for Donald Trump, the person, there would be this prosecution.
And Dasha, Senator Graham is far from the only person who is making this case, far from the only conservative Trump ally who is making this case.
That's right. And some are even going farther to try to take action on this. There are a number of folks in Congress, including James Comer, including Jim Jordan, including Kevin McCarthy, who are right now talking about the potential of doing something financially, of potentially trying to strip Manhattan DA Bragg of federal funding. And you even have Mitt Romney, who voted to impeach Trump twice, saying that the case here is weak. And what I'm hearing from Republican operatives right now, Hallie, is that there is not really an anti-Trump lane, a lane to speak out against the former president within the Republican Party right now.
Dasha Burns live for us there outside at Mar-a-Lago. Dasha, thank you very much. I want to bring in now Laura Jarrett, our senior legal correspondent. And Laura, we've got to remember here that Mr. Trump faces other investigations, not just this one where he's been charged with these felonies. There is an investigation in Georgia on election interference, and then this other one by the special counsel here in Washington about January 6th and the classified documents found at Mar-a-Lago. And that special counsel tonight, Laura, is getting a big win today as it relates to Mike Pence. Explain why.
Or at least he hopes so. We know now that Pence, the former vice president, will not fight a federal judge's order that he must testify in special counsel Jack Smith's investigation into the ways that Trump tried to cling to power and try to get Pence to block the certification of the election. There have been some question about whether Trump would try to fight it. He's tried to fight it on executive privilege grounds. He lost that fight. He could still appeal, Hallie. So I want to be clear, we should not be looking for Pence to try to get into the courthouse secretly tonight. We're not going to see that because Trump could still appeal. But it's noteworthy that Pence is not fighting it. Obviously, this opens up Pandora's box for Jack Smith if, in fact, he actually gets him in front of that grand jury. There are conversations that only Pence is privy to, and that's what he wants. Conversations leading up to January 6th.
You mentioned the possibility that Donald Trump could appeal. We have seen him try to appeal on executive privilege grounds before. He has not been successful in those fights. Is there any reason to think that this time could be different for Donald Trump and that this appeal could be successful?
No. He's lost time and again in front of the D.C. circuit there in Washington, D.C. He lost just yesterday when the court unanimously ruled that a number of his senior aides have to testify as well. So we'll see what he does on Pence, but he doesn't have a good track record here.
The legal calendar is going to collide with the political calendar, considering that the next court date for Mr. Trump is set for early December, but a lot could happen between now and then, right, as we see the calendar lay out here. Step back. Laura, big picture. We've talked about these multiple investigations and now this felony case against Mr. Trump. Based on what we now know, from the indictment that has now been out for about 24 hours, from this new information related to Mike Pence and the special counsel, do we have a sense of which case has the most legal teeth? Which could be the most legally perilous for the former president?
Well, I reserve the right to amend this answer once we actually see a little bit more meat on the bones from the special counsel's office. Obviously, facing a felony is serious. But the felonies that he's facing in New York, Hallie, I have to tell you, I've looked at all of these potential hooks to make it a felony, and they all have different challenges. Alvin Bragg, the DA, is talking about tax issues, federal, state election issues. All of these issues are very, very tricky, and it's not at all clear that he'll be able to obtain a conviction. And so I want to wait and see what Jack Smith does there in Washington, D.C., whether, in fact, he actually pursues this case. But I think the Pence thing is worth watching there because this is a potentially explosive testimony, given how much he was privy to, Hallie.
Laura Jarrett, thank you very much. Appreciate it. To weather now, because as we speak, 30 million people are in the path of a dangerous storm stretching all the way from the Great Lakes down to the Mississippi Valley. And right now, the biggest concern, violent thunderstorms, which could bring some really intense wind. Now, listen, this is the same storm system that spun off nearly a dozen tornadoes in the last 24 hours. 5 people died. Several others were hurt after an EF2 ripped through this town south of St. Louis. Look at this. I mean, look at it. Dozens of homes just flattened. An absolute nightmare for people in that town. Listen.
There's a lot of memories that came from that building right there. A lot of work and hard work, sweat and tears. But yeah, emotionally, it's hard to take. Glen Allen will never be the same. There's no doubt about it.
This has already been a really bad tornado season, with twice as many tornadoes reported as usual, killing more than 60 people across the country just since the beginning of the year. We have meteorologist Angie Lassman standing by for what's next, but I want to get to Morgan Chesky, who is on the ground in Little Rock, Arkansas. And Morgan, Little Rock was hit by a similar storm over the weekend. More than 30 people were killed across a few states, and now we're seeing this. These just horrible images of more towns flattened here.
Yeah, Hallie, you're absolutely right. The recovery process well underway here in Little Rock had to be put on pause, actually, because of this very fast-moving system that tore through the south overnight. There was real fear going into last night, Hallie, that even more tornadoes would be spawned here in Little Rock and in the Arkansas area. Fortunately, these people were spared. Unfortunately, though, we know an area in southeastern Missouri was not. At least one person was killed when a town was struck by a tornado that struck just before dawn, all part of this bigger system that's continuing to make its way to the east. And I can tell you, Hallie, that it was very reminiscent of the tornado that struck this area in that it was a fast-moving system that left a lot of damage behind. They're still getting estimates at this hour. I can tell you that here in Little Rock, this is the very path of that EF3 tornado that struck on Friday late afternoon, Hallie. It would have come over that hill. You can see a telltale notch and then just chewed through home after home before hitting a fire station that's just beyond me right here, where they actually had a crew of firefighters inside sheltering in place. And I want you to hear what the assistant chief had to say about the moment after that tornado struck their station. Take a listen.
Not even seconds after the storm hit and had subsided and passed, they begun efforts to start working and assisting the residents in the community that were affected. Just moments after that, they had a group of 20 or more people that took cover inside the station.
And the damage so extensive here in Little Rock, Hallie. That assistant chief also told me that they were still just going through a lot of these damaged properties, making sure that anyone who had a chance to get back to their home or what was left of it was able to see everything or gather whatever they could. He said what really hit him hard today was that he made his way through one home, barely any of it left standing, but in the bathroom there, he looked down and there was a pillow where someone had clearly huddled for cover when that storm hit. Hallie?
It is just an image that is unforgettable. Morgan Chesky, thank you very much, live for us in Little Rock. I want to bring in meteorologist Angie Lassman. Where's the storm headed now?
The storm is not over by any means yet, Hallie, but we have seen some improvements. It's heading to the east, so we still have some of these severe thunderstorm watches in effect from basically Pennsylvania stretching down to Arkansas, and you can see why. That line of thunderstorms continues its march to the east, including places, metro areas, just in time for this afternoon commute. Louisville, Nashville. Right now, expiring the next minute or two, we will see this tornado warning that's affecting the metro areas of Louisville, but still, nonetheless, we have severe thunderstorm warnings that are in effect right now, and we have a severe thunderstorm watch that's in effect for a couple more hours as well. 30 million people still going to be impacted here as we go through the rest of the afternoon and into the evening hours as far as that severe weather is concerned. We've seen heavy or strong winds and hail with this system, so that'll be something we'll watch here as we go through the rest of the afternoon and evening, Hallie.
There's also this question of why we're seeing so many tornadoes now and where those tornadoes are hitting. Tornado Alley, as it's known, is shifting more to the southeast, which we've talked about a lot on this show. And our Blaine Alexander went out. She embedded with this new unit focused on studying these tornadoes to help people, get more prepared, basically. We're going to see more of this on Nightly, but I want to play some of her interview with the lead scientist on that team.
We're trying to understand better these storms, where they're going to produce tornadoes, what the environment looks like before these storms produce tornadoes, so we could better predict tornadoes in the southeast.
Why are these storms so dangerous?
These storms are dangerous for many reasons. First of all, they can occur at off hours, so when people aren't prepared for tornadoes.
We know that nighttime tornadoes are very deadly, but as we talk about the shift from sort of to the southeast for Tornado Alley, there's a climate connection there, right?
Yeah, there's a climate connection for sure. Of course, we always take a pause when we're attributing specific events to climate change, but we know that a warming atmosphere means that all those ingredients are there for us to see the frequency or the magnitude of these storms to intensify. And that's exactly what we're seeing with this shifting of Tornado Alley off to the east. And one really important point is we're talking about metropolitan areas with large expansion of people living there, moving there in recent years that are not prepared for these kind of storm systems. And that's something that is really going to be worth watching here over, the coming decades, Hallie, when it comes to our warming climate.
Angie Lastman, thank you very much. Over on the West Coast, you've got House Speaker Kevin McCarthy in just the last 10 minutes, not even, wrapping up a news conference after this historic meetup with the Taiwanese president in California today, with both defying China's threats of retaliation. The House Speaker telling our own Andrea Mitchell in, again, just the last 10, 15 minutes, he is not worried. Listen.
Do you worry, Mr. Speaker, that you will escalate tensions with Beijing?
No, it is not our intention to escalate. We want to continue to build and foster democracy and freedom, and there should be no fear.
This meeting has drawn protests, these dueling demonstrations. You see them here. They're split between supporters of China and supporters of Taiwan. Speaker McCarthy says the friendship between the U.S. and Taiwan has never been stronger. Remember, this is all a big deal because China claims Taiwan as its own territory. And China sees meetings like these as basically the U.S. supporting Taiwan's independence. There's also this interesting geopolitical split screen tonight. French President Emmanuel Macron in Beijing right now for his own high-stakes meeting with the Chinese president, Xi Jinping. Aaron McLaughlin is in California for us tonight in Simi Valley outside the Reagan Library. So much attention on this meeting because of the global stakes that we just laid out here, Aaron.
Yeah, that's right, Hallie. And it was a meeting fraught with tension evident, as you mentioned, by those dueling protests that took place outside of the Reagan Presidential Library. About 100 protesters in all, half of them in support of the CCP, half of them in support of Taiwan. That protest even taking to the skies. There was a plane as the meeting was underway that repeatedly circled the library, saying that Taiwan is a part of China. This as Speaker McCarthy, during that press conference that, as you said, just wrapped up, explicitly addressed those threats from China. Take a listen to what he had to say.
There's no need for retaliation. But the one thing I would say to China, too, at no time, I am the Speaker of the House. There's no place that China is going to tell me and where I can go or who I can speak to.
He also added that at present he has no plans to visit Taipei, to visit Taiwan, but not ruling that out either. He said that any visit would need to be in the form of a bipartisan delegation, similar to the kind of delegation that welcomed the Taiwanese president today.
So now it's kind of a pins and needles moment geopolitically, Aaron, because the last time that we saw a House Speaker meet with the Taiwanese leader, it was Nancy Pelosi last year, and China responded with these live-fire military exercises. They were unprecedented at the time. We're also watching, would China do something, right? Would they take some action in response to the McCarthy meeting while Emmanuel Macron is in China? There's that question, too.
Yeah, and some experts have speculated, because, again, we don't know, though, that China might hold back for the time being while the French president is visiting Beijing. That being said, Chinese officials have been very vocal in their opposition to this meeting taking place today, calling it a provocation, saying that they plan to, quote, fight back, given what we saw in August in terms of that unprecedented military exercise by the Chinese that took place around and over the island of Taiwan. There's a big question mark in terms of their exact response, how they could, quote, retaliate. That, at this point, remains to be seen. But today, Speaker McCarthy making it very clear that there's no need for retaliation. The White House, for its part, saying that this is sort of a routine situation. It's a transit that has taken place 6 times prior, and it has taken place with all of Tsai's predecessors as well.
Yeah, they call it a transit. It is an interesting sort of semantics argument there. Aaron McLaughlin, live for us outside the Reagan Library. Thank you so much. We've got some breaking news into us tonight from overseas, because in just the last hour, we've seen Israeli police according to our team on the ground, storming Jerusalem's AlAqsa Mosque again for the second time in just the last 24 hours. Setting off a new round of violent clashes during a holy time there. This is some of the new video that is just coming into us. The confrontations started this morning when hundreds of Palestinian worshippers were arrested at the mosque, setting off a round of rocket and airstrikes between Israel and Gaza. The White House saying late today they are concerned about what's going on here.
We urge all sides to avoid further escalation. It is imperative now more than ever that Israelis and Palestinians work together to de-escalate tensions and restore calm.
Raf Sanchez is joining us now live from Jerusalem. You are on the ground there, Raf. What are we seeing now?
So, Hallie, Israeli forces first went into the AlAqsa Mosque complex behind me at dawn this morning, and then it was peaceful for most of the day while the sun was up. But once it went down again, Israeli forces once again back in there. And from this vantage point, we could hear the explosions. We could hear the stun grenades going off inside. And once again, we are getting these almost unbelievable pictures of Israeli police in riot gear, hitting people with nightsticks. They are shooting these rubber-tipped bullets inside of the mosque. And remember, Hallie, this is the third holiest site in Islam. Right. Now, we are just in the first night of Passover. We still have 2 weeks of Ramadan to go. So anyone who thought we were going to get through this holy period quietly has another thing coming. Israeli police say they had no choice but to go into the mosque because Palestinians had barricaded themselves inside and that they had stockpiled improvised weapons like rocks and fireworks. Palestinians are saying they were spending the night in the mosque as part of a Ramadan tradition, being close to their holy places overnight. So, Hallie, a very, very tense evening here in Jerusalem.
Talk through this situation, right? Because for context here, you've laid out how this timing here. It is a nexus of critical holy moments for each of the three big religions that call Jerusalem, such an important site for their faiths. There are sort of rules and limitations and different agreements specifically for some of these holy sites here to try to limit tensions just like these.
Yeah, exactly. So there are fragile agreements, right? The AlAqsa Mosque, third holiest site in Islam, but it is also to Jews known as the Temple Mount. It is the holiest site in Judaism. And ever since Israel captured this area back in 1967, there has been this kind of understanding about how the space would be shared. Jews can visit, but only Muslims can pray on this site. And also that Israel controls the security around the mosque, but the understanding was Israeli forces would largely stay out of the mosque itself. And if you speak to Palestinians, they feel that those understandings are completely unraveling, that Israeli forces are showing a new level of aggression, being prepared to go inside the mosque itself. And so it really feels like what understandings have been in place for decades may be coming apart here, Hallie.
Does the political issues that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu faced play into what we're seeing here? We've been talking for weeks with you about his political predicament here. Mass protests from liberals on one side, pressure from his far-right allies on the other. How does that come into play?
Yeah, the second part of that is really a factor here. Netanyahu under big pressure from the far right of his government to really get tough with the Palestinians, both here in Jerusalem, but also in Gaza, where we saw Palestinian militants firing rockets earlier in the day. One far right cabinet minister saying he wants Israel to strike much harder in Gaza than they've done so far. And for Hamas's part, they want to present themselves as the defender of the AlAqsa Mosque. They're prepared to shoot rockets from Gaza because of what's happening here. Hallie.
Raf Sanchez, thank you for being on the ground for us. It could be a long night for you. We appreciate your reporting from you and your team. Some new fallout tonight back here at home, with Silicon Valley in shock and in grief after a top tech titan was stabbed and killed near downtown San Francisco, according to his family, with his death now raising new questions about violent crime in that city tonight. We're talking about Bob Lee. And if you don't know his name, I bet you know his work. He founded Cash App. He worked at Google and Square, and most recently for crypto company MobileCoin. He was 43. One of his friends going one-on-one with our Miguel Almaguer just in the last couple of hours. Listen.
He would just coach people and help people succeed in ways that they didn't think they could at the beginning when you first met him. So he was an absolutely instrumental person in the tech industry.
Twitter founder Jack Dorsey, who now owns Cash App, calling Lee's death heartbreaking. And Elon Musk saying violent crime in San Francisco is horrific. Steve Patterson is joining us now. And Steve, this is a stabbing and death that has really reverberated far beyond San Francisco here, with a lot of, I think, eyes and the spotlight on police in this investigation.
Shockwaves through the business community, through the tech industry, certainly, but a lot of focus, as you mentioned, on violent crime in the Bay Area. Let me just catch up to where we are. Police get this call at about 2:35, so very early this morning, to a man in his 40s that has been stabbed, and not once, but multiple times. They have medics on scene. You imagine there's a lot of blood. They're trying to stop the bleeding. They rush him to the hospital, and he's pronounced dead at the hospital. Family and friends later confirmed that it is Bob Lee, this tech industry giant who's been around the scene for so long, done so much, and now police are investigating. We've spoken to police. They say they are looking for a person of interest. They haven't announced one yet. Looking for an arrest. Haven't announced that yet either. No motive in this case as well. The district attorney also echoing that, alongside the mayor, who says that we should expect some information soon. Police just don't have it yet. Hallie?
You mentioned the issue of violent crime being raised yet again after what happened to Bob Lee. There have been 12 homicides in San Francisco since the start of this year, according to police data, 10 in the same time last year. But if you look at statistics for other crimes, robberies, assaults, et cetera, they are up something like 8, 10, 12%, right? Talk about how big of a concern this is and the response from city leaders.
I would say it is the primary concern of the Bay Area when it comes to residents or tourists who visit or people that live there. 56 homicides in 2021. Guess how many in 2022? 56. Did not go down, and now we're at a rate that is a higher pace than it was last year. That district, by the way, where he was stabbed, Rankin Point, it is akin to, as iconic as you can imagine in San Francisco, Midtown Manhattan, Hollywood in California, and yet violent crimes are happening there as well. It is a huge concern. The district attorney has addressed it, will continue to address it, as well as the community there as well. Hallie?
Steve Patterson, live for us in California. Steve, thank you very much. Coming up here on the show, victims of a mass shooting at a church reaching a huge settlement with the Justice Department. Why a judge decided the government bears some responsibility for that attack. Plus, the head of NPR pushing back against Twitter after it got slapped with the label state-affiliated media. We'll explain why in our 5 things. The victims of a 2017 mass shooting that killed 26 people are tonight closer to locking down a huge multi-million-dollar settlement with the Justice Department. We're talking about survivors of the attack on the Sutherland Springs, Texas First Baptist Church, where a shooter opened fire during Sunday services, reaching a $144 million settlement with the DOJ. The deal just needs the final green light from Merrick Garland, the Attorney General, and the court in this case. The Justice Department saying that the agreement brings this litigation to a close, ending a painful chapter for the victims of this unthinkable crime. A federal judge had ruled in their favor back in 2021, saying the U.S. Air Force, the shooter's an Air Force vet, is at least partially responsible for the attacker getting his hands on the weapons he used. The victim's legal team said the Air Force did not report the shooter's prior arrest for domestic violence to the FBI, which would have prevented him from passing the standard background check required for most gun purchases. The DOJ appealed that ruling. They said the Air Force shouldn't be held responsible because the shooter would have found some other way to get those guns and go on the attack. NBC's Ken Delanian is joining us now, and the judge in this case actually wanted to give the victims way more money, something like $230 million, but the DOJ was pushing hard against that number. Explain how they landed on this $144 million figure and if there are any more hurdles between now and the final green light.
Hey, Hallie. Well, it's still an enormous settlement. It's really hard to sue the federal government. So this is a big sum of money for these 75 plaintiffs. The only real hurdle is that the judge has to approve the settlement. The Justice Department has now signed off on it. The victims are satisfied. And so it just awaits a judge's approval. But the Justice Department fought this, and it's a reminder that when it comes to lawsuits like this, the Justice Department often behaves like a big corporation. They zealously guard the government's prerogatives. And if you want to be really outraged, Hallie, go online and read the Air Force investigation into what happened here. The Inspector General did it. They found that on 6 occasions, the Air Force should have turned over information about this shooter and his domestic violence incident to the FBI to be in that database, and they failed to do it because of bureaucratic incompetence. The report called it inexcusable, and as a result, this shooter was able to purchase 3 assault-style weapons that were used to kill 26 people as they were attending Sunday services. And now the lawyer for these victims is saying that what they're hoping is that this, in addition to getting the money, that this whole case has changed the government's approach and tightened things up on this database, Hallie.
Well, explain that piece of it, right? Because the victims behind this lawsuit had talked to NBC News last year and said they were kind of confused by the tactics of the DOJ here. They were like, hey, this argument they're making undermines the push that the president has made for expanding background checks. Give us a context check here, right? Is it normal for the government to push back on its own policies if it means helping them win a lawsuit like this?
It actually is, and it goes back to the Justice Department acting like a corporate litigation outfit, to just, without sort of regard for the impact. And they, obviously thought the law was on their side. So I'm not suggesting they're arguing in bad faith here. But, just as an example, remember the Justice Department argued that the Biden Justice Department argued that Donald Trump was immune from a civil lawsuit in a certain case. So that's how it goes with these things. Right. But it's also an example of how, the government bureaucracy is often behaving in ways far distant from the people in the White House. And that was particularly the case with this database. It just was not working. The intent was that all this stuff was supposed to be reported, but the bureaucrats were just not doing it.
Ken Delanian, thank you very much for that reporting. Students across the country today are demanding more changes to gun laws in this country after the killings of 3 9-year-olds and 3 school staffers at the Covenant School in Nashville. Take a look here. You're about to see Tampa, Boston, Denver, Johnson City, Tennessee. Students walking out chanting, "Protect our kids." The question is, right, are any gun law changes going to happen in Tennessee? In just the last hour or so, Democratic lawmakers are laying out 5 new bills to try.
We're not trying to restrict anybody's ability to legally, lawfully carry a firearm. We just want to make sure that the right people are doing it in the right places.
And right now, Republicans in the State House are focusing on kicking out 3 Democratic lawmakers when they come back into the floor tomorrow. Why? Because they brought a megaphone on the State House floor to support protesters. Kathy Park's been following all of it for us.
Hallie, stricter gun control measures certainly have been at the forefront here in Tennessee shortly after the mass shooting at the Covenant School in Nashville, where the suspect gunned down 6 people, 3 of them children. Hundreds had gathered at the state capitol last week demanding change, and those demonstrations spilled into this week. Even today in Johnson City in northeast Tennessee, hundreds of students actually staged a walkout chanting, "Protect our kids." Meanwhile, the fallout is deepening among 3 Democratic state lawmakers who participated in some of those rallies last week. In fact, a resolution had passed declaring the 3 had participated in disorderly behavior, and lawmakers will be voting tomorrow for a possible expulsion of those lawmakers. Meanwhile, investigators continue to comb through the evidence left behind by the suspect in last week's mass shooting. Right now, we still don't have a motive. Back to you.
Our thanks to Kathy Park for that reporting. And be sure to stay with us for our next hour when I will be joined one-on-one by Tennessee State Rep Gloria Johnson. She's one of those 3 Democrats who could end up out of the State House altogether because of her support of a gun reform protest at the State House. That's 6 o'clock Eastern right here on NBC News Now. Let's get you over to the 5 things our team thinks you should know about tonight. Number 1, Twitter is getting criticized today for calling NPR's Twitter account state-affiliated media. That puts NPR in the same category as state-owned news agencies in Russia and China. The head of NPR calling the move unacceptable. NPR does get some government money, but it says it's editorially independent from any government agency or funding source. Number 2, board gamers remembering the life and the legacy of the creator of the Settlers of Catan game, who died today. Klaus Tuber was 70 years old. He was apparently working as a dental technician back in the 80s when he started making games in his basement. Catan and its spin-offs have sold tens of millions of copies ever since they were released in 1995. Number 3, Pope Francis holding his weekly audience in St. Peter's Square today after getting out of the hospital for bronchitis. You can see him riding in a Pope-mobile through the crowd. It comes ahead of a pretty busy Holy Week schedule for the Pope. Number 4, the invites are out from Buckingham Palace for the coronation of King Charles. And check it out, his wife, Queen Camilla. That's getting some attention because up until now, she's been referred to as the Queen Consort. The White House today says First Lady Jill Biden will represent the U.S. at the coronation next month. Number 5, former Georgia candidate for governor Stacey Abrams is joining the faculty at Howard University here in Washington. She'll take on an endowed chair focusing on race and black politics, according to a university statement. Abrams is also set to lead a speaker series featuring guests with diverse perspectives. When we come back here on the show, Chipotle is suing Sweetgreen in a chicken bowl trademark battle that could affect what you order for lunch. We're getting into what this means legally and functionally coming up in just a minute. So have you heard about the battle coming up today between two brands you're probably very familiar with? Chipotle is suing Sweetgreen because they say Sweetgreen is basically ripping off its trademark with its new Chipotle chicken bowl. Here's the deal. Lawyers for Chipotle say, and I'm quoting here, that Sweetgreen's very similar and directly competitive bowl is an attempt to capitalize on the Chipotle brand and likely to confuse consumers. Chipotle even wants all the money Sweetgreen's made so far from the bowl. But Sweetgreen's pushing the new meal. They have been ever since they announced it last week. Take a look at these ads. Sweetgreen saying it wants to evolve the brand beyond salads, and now saying in a statement it's aware of the lawsuit and does not comment on pending litigation. NBC legal analyst Danny Savalos is with us now. And since this news came out today, Danny, it's raising some questions on trademark law, right? Like how much power a trademark has. I feel compelled to point out that Chipotle, the name of the burrito chain, it is also a pepper. You know what I mean? Like it's a piece of food, right? So it's not like when we talk about Chipotle every single time we're talking about the business. Help us understand if Chipotle has a case here.
Chipotle is a pepper, but Hallie, so too is Apple, a fruit. And Apple is one of the most recognizable brands in the world. Many moons ago, I was a trademark lawyer.
Wait a second, Danny. But my grocery store doesn't have to call apples, you know, round red fruits. Like they can still call it an apple.
Exactly right. And of course, Apple is not looking to occupy the space of actual Apple sales. And that's what I'm getting to about trademark law, intellectual property law, copyrights, trademarks. I could tell you about the law. I could tell you about the federal law that applies to them. But ultimately, in my experience handling these cases many years ago, they're all different. You really can't compare one to the other. And you look, you see Chipotle there. There are two things to understand. You have the word Chipotle, which is trademarked, but you also have the stylized mark, it's called. And that would be, for example, that distinctive cursive that you see in Coca-Cola or Google, when you go to Google and they have that rainbow-colored font. So recognizable that I suspect if I wrote another word in that stylized font, you would recognize it. And that's two prongs of what Chipotle is complaining about. Chipotle is complaining that if you put Chipotle in front of the product, you are creating a likelihood of confusion. They actually suggested to Sweetgreen's, why don't you do this instead? Just say, this is our salad or whatever the dish is, and it's Chipotle flavored, instead of putting the word in front and using a font or a typeface that Chipotle says is too similar to the typeface that they trademarked. They didn't just trademark the word Chipotle, they also trademarked the way, the artwork in the way it's written. So Chipotle's claim here is pretty straightforward. Look, we got a trademark in the word Chipotle. You can argue about whether that seems fair or not, but the trademark office gave it to us. We can now enforce it. So you, Sweetgreen's, needs to stop using our mark in connection with these services because they're creating a likelihood of confusion.
If you were repping Sweetgreen, how would you lay out their defense? And if Sweetgreen wins, what kind of repercussion would that have for trademark law? Like, could that set some sort of precedent here?
Yeah, well, Attorney Hallie Jackson just pointed out exactly the main thrust of my defense would be this. Look, Chipotle, yeah, you may have a trademark in the word Chipotle, but if our product includes the ingredient Chipotle, you can't prevent us from saying what is in our product or using a description of our product. And so, obviously, Chipotle's response is, well, you can use that description, but put it later in the description. In other words, here's our dish. It's got corn, beans, all this other stuff. Oh, and then it has Chipotle. And be careful that you don't use a font that is too close to the one that we trademarked and is one of the properties that we own, one of the brands that we own.
Real quick, if Chipotle does end up winning this, I believe they want the profits that Sweetgreen has made off of this bowl just in like the last week since it's been out. Is that likely?
It is possible. The thing about these trademark and copyright cases is that it often involves massive profits. You're looking to disgorge all the money that one party made from using your mark. And that's why a lot of these settle. The ones that go to trial, and you see it a lot in the copyright context, in music, when musicians allegedly steal music or the sound of certain songs and make it their own, you see that. They rarely go to trial because the stakes are so high. But when they do, they're multi-million-dollar verdict. So this is serious business.
It is serious business with a perhaps unserious question that people may be asking, which is, will Sweetgreen charge extra for guac in the Chipotle chicken bowls? I mean, who knows? We're going to see how this plays out. I don't expect. Do you have any? I don't expect you to have an answer for that.
No, I am a certified burrito expert, but this area, this particular dish, is outside my expertise, and frankly, I think guacamole is a major distraction, and I'm against it. So that may be controversial, but that's the way it is.
Gotta go. Danny Savalos, okay, we'll talk about that later. Thank you, appreciate you. Coming up, we'll talk about something else, $1 million bust in Miami. Not for guac, not for burritos, but for something that you drink, probably a lot. Wait till you find out what it is. That's next in The Local. So tonight's Newsmaker now, where we go one-on-one with the people making headlines on the issues we're all talking about. And tonight it's the outrage and the protests in Iran that may have fallen out of the headlines lately, but they are still happening. As more women defy officials there by not complying with the country's strict dress codes. Some of them are still facing attacks, crackdowns from the government, arrests, like 2 women who were attacked by a man with yogurt. You see it here because they were not wearing hijabs. And since the death of Mahsa Amini, the 22-year-old who died in police custody back in September, we have seen unprecedented protests around the country. More than 20,000 people have been arrested. More than 500 people have been killed. I want to bring in now somebody who knows about this, who talks about this, and that's Iranian comedian, actor, and activist Maz Jobrani. His new comedy special, The Birds and the Bees, is out on YouTube right now. Maz, thank you so much for being with us tonight.
Thank you for having me, Hallie. How are you?
I'm okay. I'm glad to be talking with you. We've been looking forward to this because the issue of these protests in Iran, of the way that these demonstrations have been developing, is so important. And I'm just going to be honest with you. It doesn't always end up making like the national nightly news, right? Even though it is still a huge and important issue. Your own activism picked up, I think, after the death of Mahsa Amini. You've talked about that after she died in police custody last year. Talk about that.
Absolutely. You know, I'm a stand-up comedian, and if you looked at any of my social media before the killing of Mahsa Amini, it was all about, comedy. And then once that happened, once Mahsa Amini, who was this young 22-year-old lady who was walking in the streets of Iran, and her hair was a little bit out of her hijab, and the morality police killed her, those protests broke out, and my Instagram page from then on had become a page of an activist. I was trying to constantly bring attention to and help amplify the voice of the people of Iran who were fighting for their freedoms. And it was a women's-led movement, as we know, and it continues. And the one way that I was trying to help explain to Americans, I was saying that Iran is not just fighting for themselves. Iranians are fighting for democracy for the world, because if you think about it, when the Islamic Republic came into power after the Islamic Revolution, the first people they went after were women. They took away women's rights, and then they would go after the LGBTQ community, then religious minorities. And when we're in America and we say, well, that doesn't pertain to us, I remind people just last year, a woman's right to choose was taken away. And there's a lot of talk you hear of then going after LGBTQ rights and other rights, as we see all the time. So we really need to pay attention to a place like Iran and try to support the people of Iran in their pursuit for freedom.
I thought it was interesting that you've talked about how now your audiences applaud you in light of what is happening in Iran when you talk about this, when you say that you are, from Iran, an Iranian comedian here. I can't imagine that was always the case for you, right? How much of a shift has that been?
You know, Hallie, I came to the U.S. late 1978, and then quickly the hostage crisis happened. And from then on, I was constantly faced with, bullying or negative images of Iranians. The movie Not Without My Daughter, the Iran-Contra hearings, anytime, any place you would name it, we were always getting negative stereotypes. Now, what happened was a lot of people, when the protests happened last year in Iran, people were saying, is it a protest? Is it a revolution? And I was trying to explain to people the revolution has already happened in that we, or the women of Iran, I should say, helped change the hearts and minds of Americans. I would do shows at the Comedy Store in front of an American audience, and I would mention I'm from Iran. And whereas in the past, it would either get a neutral or a negative reaction, it was getting applause from an American audience. So you are absolutely right. The movement last year definitely has already helped change the image of the Iranian people. Because one thing I heard that I will repeat, it's not the Islamic Republic of Iran, it's the Islamic Republic versus Iran. It's the people of Iran against their government.
And that has been the consequences of those demonstrations that you're talking about are incredibly intense. They are dangerous. There are reports that protesters, kids as young as 12, are getting beaten by police. We saw that, you remember, wave of poisonings of schoolgirls across the country. This is serious and maybe even deadly stuff. It has been deadly, as we have seen. And here you are as a comedian coming in, and I think people might think, wait, is that incongruous to have sort of comedy playing a part in this? Comedy can be and often is commentary, too. And I wonder how you see the power of what you do as a comedian to shine a spotlight here.
Absolutely. Listen, as a comedian, I've always, as an Iranian American in America, I've always talked about issues that pertain to my community. So early on after September 11th, I was talking a lot about a lot of the issues where there was discrimination against people from an Iranian American background, Arab background, Muslim background. And now in this case, it is my opportunity to bring to the forefront and to the attention of my American audience this struggle that's going on for the people of Iran. And I try to do that as much as I can. And I always say in my show, you always end up with, you know, it's a comedy show, so you do end up with comedy. But the punchline is never the victims. The punchline is always either the people who are the hypocrites in this case, which would be the government of Iran in this case, or it's self-deprecating material. But I do think that comedy, you know, I heard one time D.L. Hughley, he said, comedy is like giving people their medicine, but in orange juice.
I think that's super interesting. Sometimes in news we talk about, you know, it's broccoli and the mashed potatoes. Same kind of concept, I think. Maz Jobrani, thank you so much for being with us tonight. Your new comedy special. Want to make sure people know The Birds and the Bees. It is out on YouTube right now. Maz, thank you. NBC News covers hundreds of stories every day. And because you couldn't possibly read or watch or listen to them all, our bureau teams have done it for you. This is what they tell us is going down in their regions in a segment we call The Local. From our Southern Bureau, a Democrat in the North Carolina State House says she's going to switch over to the Republican Party. Why does that matter? Because now the GOP in that state has a veto-proof majority in both the State House and Senate. So if the Democratic governor vetoes something, they now have enough votes to override it. There's a lot on the line there. Abortion laws, immigration laws, election laws, too. We'll watch that. Out of our Midwest Bureau today, Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer is signing a bill repealing the state's ban on abortion. The 1931 law had banned abortion without exceptions for rape or incest. It was not enforced after abortion became a federal right with Roe versus Wade. Whitmer said repealing the ban was long overdue. And from our Southern Bureau, if you're wondering who's got milk, 6 people got busted for $1 million dairy theft. Miami-Dade police call it, well, Operation Got Milk. They say these suspects who worked for a milk distributor pilfered something like $1 million worth of milk, plus about $350,000 worth of crates. No comment yet from the companies involved. Still to come, the big backlash against Bud Light, why some folks are lashing out against the brand online with videos of them pouring their beer down the drain, and how it ties to LGBTQ plus rights. That's coming up. Bud Light tonight facing some backlash over its partnership with a trans influencer. Take a look at this video posted by Kid Rock. It has like 1 million views and hundreds of comments. A lot of people praising him for shooting at cases of Bud Light. We'll show you that in a second. There are other videos that show consumers, like customers, dumping Bud Light down the trash, down into sinks, destroying cases of the beer. If you're like, wait, why? What's going on here? It's because Bud Light teamed up with trans influencer Dylan Mulvaney to promote the beer during Bud Light's March Madness contest. Jay Valle, who's been following this story, is here now. Explain this. Explain the timeline here.
Well, after Dylan posted that, Hallie, thank you for having me, first of all. But, you know, after Dylan posted this video, I mean, a lot of backlash came mostly from conservatives. And then when you have those individuals and with larger platforms like Kid Rock, you can imagine the conversation ignited even more. But Dylan Mulvaney is no stranger to the backlash from conservatives who, as she has 10 million followers on TikTok, and she's a trans woman who has documented her experience for over a year now. I assume now that Dylan received backlash on a daily basis, so she did not respond to our request for comment.
What are we hearing from Bud Light on this?
Yeah, Bud Light, the last 48 hours, as these videos have thousands of views, they did not ignore what conversations were being sparked, and Bud Light sent a statement, actually. Anheuser-Busch works with hundreds of influencers across their brands, and as many ways to authentically connect with their audiences across various demographics is to partner with these influencers. So, as of this point, these videos, again, continuing to flow in, and that backlash is pretty intense there, as, that Kid Rock video has over 1 million views now.
Jay Valle, thank you very much for that breakdown. We'll read more about it, I know, in your postings for NBCnews.com. Your stories there. Appreciate it. That does it for us this hour. More coverage picks up right now. On the air with new threats from an old playbook, with our sources tonight saying the judge overseeing former President Trump's case has to get extra security. His family, too. A gut check on what's real and what's not in some of these newest attack claims, and a live report on the move from Mike Pence that might hurt his former boss, if not politically, then legally. Plus, a bad tornado year tonight, maybe getting worse, with millions more people now in the path of violent storms. We're on the ground in Arkansas. And is Sweetgreen ripping off Chipotle? The burrito makers say yes because of the salad chain's new chicken bowl, and now Chipotle wants the profits from it. We've got the latest on this fast casual fight. Plus, I'll go one-on-one with comedian and activist Maz Jobrani on his work to keep Iran's crackdown on female protesters in the spotlight. And in tonight's Newsmaker, why a Democrat in Tennessee could end up kicked out of the State House by her colleagues for backing a protest to change gun laws. That interview's coming up live later in the show. Hey there, I'm Hallie, and right now we've got some new details on the new threats against the judge overseeing the case against former President Trump. Just a day after that unprecedented arraignment that you watched live right here in New York. Here's what multiple sources are telling our team just in the last couple of hours, that Justice Juan Rashan and his family are getting threatening calls, emails, letters, threats that are unsubstantiated for now, that are also being aimed at the Manhattan DA and other officials in his office. These threats are being investigated, but what we're learning today is the NYPD and court officers are beefing up security just in case. The new reporting is coming in the aftermath of Donald Trump yet again leaning into personal attacks against the judge. Most recently, though, after he and everybody else involved in this case were asked not to say anything that could incite violence.
I have a Trump-hating judge with a Trump-hating wife and family whose daughter worked for Kamala Harris and now receives money from the Biden-Harris campaign and a lot of men.
Okay, so is that true? Mr. Trump gave no evidence that Justice Rashan or his wife, quote unquote, hate Mr. Trump. We do know that Rashan oversaw a jury trial in which the Trump Organization was found guilty of tax fraud, among other charges, leading to $1 million+ fine. It is true that Rashan's daughter runs a digital strategy firm that previously worked for Vice President Kamala Harris's presidential campaign and the Biden-Harris campaign in 2020. But there's no evidence our team can find that she's worked for them since or is now part of some Biden political operation. Her company did not return requests for comment. Remember, Rashan is overseeing the case in which Mr. Trump faces 34 felony charges in New York, accused of essentially lying about business records tied to a hush money payment ahead of the 2016 election. But that is not the only legal trouble that Mr. Trump faces, because in the last couple of hours, we're learning that his former vice president, Mike Pence, is not going to fight a judge's order to testify in a different federal investigation, looking at Mr. Trump's push to try to overturn the legitimate results of the 2020 election. That is a big deal. Our Laura Jarrett is going to help explain why in just a second, but I want to start outside Mar-a-Lago with Dasha Burns. She's in West Palm Beach, Florida. And Dasha, our new reporting on these threats here to Justice Rashan show how serious and potentially dangerous the stakes are here. We're hearing from the Trump campaign on this, basically saying, and I'm talking about what Donald Trump said last night, the idea that this is a Trump-hating judge. They say, hey, President Trump is laying out the facts. Facts matter. But this is part of a pattern and playbook that we have seen from Donald Trump before.
Yeah, Hallie, that's exactly right. I mean, if you look back, this is not the first and probably not the last time that we are going to hear him attacking officials at the federal level, at the state level, even at the local level. He has attacked prosecutors. He's attacked judges. He's attacked anyone that he has seen as undercutting him, undermining him, insulting him, or going after him in any way. Of course, in this case, though, the stakes are significantly high for him and for his legal team that is trying to defend him right now before this very judge. Our Savannah Guthrie asked his lawyer about this earlier today. Take a listen.
Did you do what the judge asked you to do and advise him to knock it off?
President Trump heard the judge. He's not done anything to try to incite violence.
And, Hallie, we also know from the Donald Trump history books that it is not very easy for anyone on his team, legal team or campaign team, to really control him or tell him what to say or not to say. And I expect, while his legal team might be concerned about this, he does believe that this is good for him on the campaign side. So I doubt that we're going to hear him toning down that rhetoric anytime soon, Hallie.
Well, he's getting no pressure from conservatives to do so, or very little pressure, because he is getting cover now from, for example, people where I am in Washington, conservatives who are kind of downplaying this legal case against him. We heard that today from Senator Lindsey Graham. Listen.
I just think legally this is going to fold like a cheap suit. I mean, there's no way in the world that a normal person would be prosecuted under this theory. You'll never convince me, if it were not for Donald Trump, the person, there would be this prosecution.
It's not like Graham's the only person making that case.
No, and some are even taking it further. House Judiciary Committee Chair Jim Jordan is even talking about trying to pull the federal purse strings away from Manhattan DA Bragg, talking to others as well, talking to Kevin McCarthy about that potentiality. Even Mitt Romney, who has voted for Trump's impeachment twice, calling this a weak case, Hallie. And as I'm talking to Republican operatives, they're telling me that essentially right now there is no anti-Trump, anti-indictment lane in the Republican Party, Hallie.
Dasha Burns live for us in West Palm Beach, just outside Mar-a-Lago. Dasha, thank you. I want to bring in Laura Jarrett, our senior legal correspondent. And in the last 30 minutes or so, Laura, you are out with some new analysis here that asks the question about what could kill the so-called zombie case, as some Manhattan prosecutors who used to work on it had apparently called it. Explain that.
Yeah, it was the case that would be resurrected only to die again, time and again, because it had so much jury appeal. At least that's what prosecutors thought, and certainly what they're hoping here today. It has everything: alleged affairs, money. It has all of the intrigue that you would think would be appealing to a jury. But I looked at sort of the legal hook here, Hallie, because of course falsifying business records is a misdemeanor. So how do you bump it up to a felony? You need some hook to do that. And the district attorney offered 3 possible scenarios, and each of those possible scenarios, tax issues, state election conspiracy, federal election crimes, each of those has potential pitfalls for this district attorney. And so if you're going to bring a history-making case, I think a lot of people are scratching their heads trying to figure out why do it this way. Interestingly enough, though, Hallie, some people who worked in that office previously told me, look, he may have been intentionally vague because it allows him the flexibility, him being the district attorney, it allows him the flexibility to try to figure out which argument he wants to make before it actually reaches a jury. Remember, this is just about probable cause in order to get the indictment. Before it reaches a jury, he may change his theory. And so some speculated that he did this purposefully to give himself that flexibility.
Pull back for a second here, right? Because there has been so much attention, obviously, in the last week and a half or so about this particular case, the one that Alvin Bragg, the Manhattan DA, is bringing. Donald Trump faces other investigations. There's one in Georgia on election interference, and there's one by the special counsel, people see it here on screen, related to January 6th and those classified documents found at Mar-a-Lago. There is a significant development that you scooped today, Laura, not too long ago, late this afternoon, that explains why a move by Mike Pence could end up giving the special counsel a big win. Why?
Yeah, the special counsel investigation going on in D.C., while all of this other stuff is going on in Manhattan, I think is really the one to watch there, because Pence is not fighting this. He's going to actually agree to testify, provide documents, testimony in front of a federal grand jury. That is a significant moment if, in fact, he does that. And again, Trump can still appeal this case, but the clock is running out on that. And if he doesn't appeal it, Pence is going to have to go in front of that grand jury, which would really be just an incredible moment because, of course, the special counsel wants all of the interactions, all of the moments, anything that Pence can shed light on as to Trump's intent, because there are conversations where, Hallie, they are the only two parties to it, and only Pence can deliver that testimony.
Laura Jarrett, our NBC News senior legal correspondent. Thank you very much, Laura. Appreciate it. To weather now, because as we speak, some 30 million people are in the path of a dangerous storm that stretches from the Great Lakes down to the Mississippi Valley. And right now, the biggest concern, violent thunderstorms and really intense wind. Listen. You can hear it there, right? The wind blowing past the microphone, the dark clouds. This is the same storm system that has spun off nearly a dozen tornadoes in the last 24 hours. 5 people died and 5 others were hurt after an EF2 ripped through this town south of St. Louis, or at least what used to be this part of town. Look at this. Dozens of homes just flattened. We're getting some new numbers in now from the State Highway Patrol, which says nearly 90 structures, so that's homes, businesses, garages, et cetera, ended up being damaged. This has already been a really bad tornado season. We've seen about twice as many tornadoes as usual this year alone, and they've been deadly. More than 60 people have been killed in this country since the beginning of the year. Meteorologist Angie Lastman is standing by for what's next, but I want to get to Morgan Chesky, who's on the ground in Little Rock, Arkansas. Morgan, walk us through it.
Yeah, Hallie, you mentioned that horrible tornado that happened in the southeastern part of Missouri, Bollinger County. 5 people dead there. What made it even deadlier is the fact that this struck, well, according to National Weather Service officials, between 3:30 and 4 a.m. We know that tornadoes that strike during the night twice as deadly there. Horrible news there. Here in Arkansas, in Little Rock, I can tell you, Hallie, that people are breathing a huge sigh of relief because they thought that in less than a week, they were going to be hit by potentially multiple tornadoes. This is what's left behind after an EF3 tornado struck here last Friday, leaving 5 people dead here in Arkansas, damaging more than 2,500 buildings across this state, Hallie. And recovery actually had to be put on hold just because of the wind and the rain that came through with this system late yesterday, overnight, and into today. I had a chance to speak with an assistant fire chief who described just kind of the shock of having one of their own fire stations hit with firefighters inside that building on Friday as a result of this massive EF3 tornado. Take a listen.
It's ongoing. It doesn't give you a chance to take a break and relax. Trust me, no one here has relaxed. We are still remaining in a state of readiness.
And there's no timetable on when they're going to have this fire station up and running. The crews from here have been stationed at other stations across the city. They do know, Hallie, that tornado season still has months to go here. And that is why right now the focus on recovery, clearing out debris, getting people permanent places to stay because severe weather, no telling when it could come back here. Hallie?
And even if it doesn't, right, at least for a little bit, there is still a very long road ahead. Morgan Chesky, thank you for being on the ground there. Appreciate it. I want to bring in meteorologist Angie Lastman, talk through the track of the storm and where it's headed next.
It's headed to the east, and we've still got a lot of watches in effect. We've got some warnings in effect as well. So let's talk about what we're left over with. We do have the severe thunderstorm warnings going just south of Lexington, Kentucky. We have one right near Jackson that has had reports of hail, dime-sized hail. We also have one that's just off to the east of Columbus. Near Louisville, we had a gust up to 78 miles per hour from the airport. So even though we don't have the tornado watches in effect anymore, for a lot of these areas along this line of thunderstorms, the threat is not over just yet. We're going to see this last with us through the rest of the afternoon and into the evening hours, especially as the sun goes down. Still the potential for some of these stronger thunderstorms to spin up maybe a tornado or two. We, of course, have the potential for that damaging hail up to 2 inches. It now includes 30 million people in some of these cities. Cleveland, Columbus are going to be included in this through the rest of the evening, Hallie, a time where we're going to have to continue to pay attention to what this system does.
Angie Lastman, thank you for tracking all of it for us. Appreciate it. We are learning tonight some breaking news overseas in Israel, where Israeli police have just apparently stormed Jerusalem's AlAqsa Mosque again for the 2nd time today. Take a look at some of this new video coming in. It's setting off a new round of violent confrontations during a very holy period there. It is a holy time. It is Ramadan, Passover. Listen to this. Coming up on Easter here. I mean, you can hear it there, right? The confrontations started this morning when hundreds of Palestinian worshipers were arrested at the mosque, setting off a round of rocket and airstrikes between Israel and Gaza. The White House says they are concerned about all of this. Listen.
We urge all sides to avoid further escalation. It is imperative now more than ever that Israelis and Palestinians work together to de-escalate tensions and restore calm.
Raf Sanchez is joining us now. So, Raf, what we are seeing tonight is a bit of deja vu from what we saw not too long ago. Help us explain that. What are you seeing now?
Yeah, Hallie. So Israeli police first went into the mosque this morning. Then things were pretty calm during the daylight hours. The sun went down here. And once again, Israeli forces storming into the Al-Aqsa Mosque complex behind me, the third holiest site in Islam. And these almost unbelievable pictures coming out showing Israeli police in full riot gear, hitting people with nightsticks, hitting people with their guns, firing these rubber-tipped bullets. Now, the police say they had no choice but to go in there because Palestinians had barricaded themselves inside. They had stockpiled improvised weapons like rocks, like fireworks. And we did see Palestinians literally shooting fireworks inside of the mosque earlier on today. And Hallie, as you mentioned, this is only the first night of Passover. We still have 2 more weeks of Ramadan to go. So anybody who thought we were going to get through this holy period without trouble has another thing coming.
Explain how it got to this point at this particular holy site.
So the Israelis captured this area in 1967, and ever since then there has been this kind of fragile understanding trying to balance the interests of both Jews and Muslims who consider this to be sacred ground. The agreement is Jews can visit here, Muslims are the only ones who can pray, and also that while Israel has sort of security control over the area, Israel would largely stay out of the mosque itself. And Hallie, if you talk to Palestinians, they feel that that agreement is just breaking down. They have never seen Israel going inside the mosque with this level of force, and that has people all over the region concerned about what it means for this holy site. Hallie.
I just want to let viewers know, because if I'm hearing it, they're hearing it. These booms, this sound behind you, they are fireworks, right? You're fine. This is not related to what we just were talking about.
They are fireworks for everything. This is still a joyful period for a lot of Muslims in the city. It is Ramadan. It is common to hear fireworks. They're going off just over my cameraman Haldoon's left shoulder over there. Fortunately, they're going off in the sky. They are not going off inside the mosque, which is one thing we saw earlier on today, along with stun grenades. Hallie.
Raf Sanchez, thank you so much for being there, for being live on the ground for us tonight. Really appreciate it. Silicon Valley back here at home in shock and in grief after a top tech titan was stabbed and killed near downtown San Francisco, according to his family, Tuesday morning. Bob Lee's death is now raising new questions about violent crime in that city. He was 43 years old, and if you don't know his name, you almost certainly know his work. He founded Cash App, worked at Google and Square, and most recently for MobileCoin, a crypto company. You've got so much reaction coming in from other people who are in the business world, in the tech world, like Jack Dorsey, who now owns Cash App, the founder of Twitter, calling Lee's death heartbreaking. And Elon Musk saying violent crime in San Francisco is horrific. Steve Patterson is joining us now. And Steve, this is doing a couple of things, right? It's raising questions now about violent crime in San Francisco and about, more specifically, this investigation here. For people who don't know San Francisco, this stabbing, this death happened in a pretty centrally located area.
Yeah, this is where the Bay Bridge is. So people, this is iconic San Francisco. This is something that if you saw on a postcard, it would make sense to you. It would read San Francisco. So these are pretty upscale areas. This shouldn't be an area for violent crime, but as we've heard from the mayor and now the district attorney and, of course, police, no area should have violent crime like this in San Francisco, but yet they do. Let's start with the investigation, though. Police searching for a suspect. They don't have a person of interest as far as we know. They don't have a suspect. They haven't made an arrest. That is corroborated by the district attorney, as I mentioned, not too long ago, and the mayor, who released a statement not too long ago. She says, quote, "The homicide of Bob Lee is a horrible tragedy. My sympathies go out to his family and friends. The police are actively investigating what happened and will share details as soon as they can." We had folks from our investigative team here find out is as soon as they can. Could that mean tonight? The source that we spoke to says probably not. So the investigation investigation stands as searching for a suspect, reaching out to the public for any additional information. Meanwhile, you mentioned Jack Dorsey, you mentioned Elon Musk. That is just two in a long list of tech people and business folks who are reeling and really shaken by this death. We spoke to a friend of Bob Lee. Our Miguel Almaguer colleague spoke to him. Here's what he told us about who Bob Lee was. Listen to this.
It was an absolutely senseless murder of Bob, and we're just terribly sad and devastated by it. I mean, it's going to be hard to imagine a world where you can't call Bob and say, "Hey, I have this problem I'm thinking through. Can you help me through it?"
Incredibly sad for that community, and of course his friends and family all speaking out about this as police continue their investigation. Hallie.
Can you pull back a little bit, because some of what has been raised are these questions, as we talked about crime in San Francisco that has become, frankly, a semi-nationalized issue here. Steve, with, as you know, I sit in Washington and have the political perspective, right, from lawmakers here, and you see people generally on the right, a lot of conservatives, point to San Francisco and to try to make the case that crime there is a reason why Democrats shouldn't be sort of in control of some of these law and order issues.
Yeah, I mean, look, when I go to a place like Chicago or Detroit or any big city, there are certain neighborhoods we go where our company may assign us a security detail because it may be unsafe or they may fear for our safety. When I go anywhere in the Bay Area, and I mean the Bay Area writ large, we are always assigned a security detail. It is a problem that I think the mayor has to reckon with, as well as lawmakers in and around California, but specifically also the district attorney, who has been dealing with these violent outbursts of crime. 56 in 2021 and 2022. We're on pace for even more than we were last year. So this has to be addressed, and I think this is certainly highlighting that fact in real time. Hallie?
Steve Patterson, live for us in California. Thank you. The victims of a 2017 mass shooting that killed 26 people are closer today to locking down a huge settlement with the Justice Department. Survivors of the attack on Sutherland Springs, Texas, First Baptist Church, where a shooter opened fire during Sunday services, have reached a $144 million settlement with the Justice Department. The deal just needs the final green light from Attorney General Merrick Garland and the court in this case, with the DOJ saying that this agreement brings the litigation to a close, ending a painful chapter for the victims of this unthinkable crime. Here's how this went down. Here's the backstory here. Back in 2021, a federal judge ruled in favor of the victims, saying that the Air Force, the shooter was an Air Force vet, is at least partially responsible for the attacker getting his hands on the weapons he used. The victim's legal team said the Air Force failed to report the shooter's prior arrest for domestic violence to the FBI. That's important, they say, because that would have prevented him from passing the standard background check required for most gun purchases. The DOJ appealed that 2021 ruling. They argue the Air Force shouldn't be held responsible because the shooter would have found some other way to get those guns and go on that attack. NBC's Ken Delanian is joining us now. Ken, it is a significant settlement. It is in no way, as the Department of Justice has acknowledged, erasing the pain and the grief and the nightmare that these families have lived over the last 5-6 years here.
No, that's right. And this is an egregious case, Hallie. A federal judge in this case awarded these families $230 million in a trial, but the Department of Justice appealed that verdict, and these negotiations ensued, and this settlement is the result of that. And look, there's an independent Air Force Inspector General investigation that found that these failures were really inexcusable, that the Air Force had 6 occasions where they should have passed information on about this future shooter's domestic violence incident, and it would have been put in a database, and he would have been precluded from buying a firearm. That didn't happen. He was able to purchase legally assault rifles. He went into a church during Sunday services and killed 26 people in one of the most horrific mass shootings in U.S. history. These families wanted money, but they also wanted a greater focus in the federal government on making sure that these incidents get reported and gets put into this database so that people are precluded from buying firearms, and they're hoping to get that.
The victims behind this lawsuit talked with NBC News last year and said they were kind of confused by the way that the DOJ was taking on this case, basically saying that their argument undermines the push that President Biden was making for expanding background checks, essentially that the government was like pushing back on its own policies to try to get a win in this lawsuit. Is that something we typically see?
Well, the government would say we were pushing back on the idea that you should get money, right? So that this is very much the civil justice system, and in this case, the Justice Department acts like a corporation being sued, and they're trying to protect what is really the taxpayers' money.
Yeah.
But there's also a public policy interest in punishing the government. You could argue in this case to get their attention, to make sure that this doesn't happen again. Because Hallie, this is the third huge settlement that the U.S. government has had to pay out after charges of negligence in a mass shooting. The other one was Parkland, and then the other one, the one in South Carolina at the church, where different parts of the government was aware of problems before and didn't act the way they should have. Hallie.
So are they going to do something about that?
Well, look, the Biden administration says they are focusing on trying to improve this background check system and make sure people comply with the regulations. But when you read that Air Force investigation, nobody seemed to know the rules, and these bureaucrats were not doing what they were supposed to be doing, Hallie.
Ken Delaney, thank you very much for that reporting. Coming up here on the show, it's being called a day of reckoning in Maryland, with a new report saying Catholic officials sexually abused hundreds of kids over more than 6 decades. We've got more on that next. Plus, why a pilot program in L.A. has the city blasting classical music out of subway stations. That's coming up in the 5 Things. Over on the West Coast, former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi is applauding the person who succeeded her, House Speaker Kevin McCarthy, for hosting a historic meetup with the Taiwanese president in California today. Former Speaker Pelosi, Speaker Emeritus, if you will, is putting out a new statement in just the last 30 minutes. A rare show of support across the aisle from her to McCarthy, as both the U.S. and Taiwan are defying China's threats of retaliation. In just about the last hour, McCarthy is telling our Andrea Mitchell he is unconcerned with the way that China is reacting. Listen.
Do you worry, Mr. Speaker, that you will escalate tensions with Beijing?
No, it's not our intention to escalate. We want to continue to build and foster democracy and freedom, and there should be no fear.
This meeting, this sit-down, is bringing protests, these kinds of dueling demonstrations. You see them here outside the Reagan Library where this happened, between supporters of China and supporters of Taiwan. Speaker McCarthy says the friendship between the U.S. and Taiwan has never been stronger. Remember, this is all a big deal because China claims Taiwan as its own territory. So China sees meetings like this one as basically the U.S. supporting Taiwanese independence. We're also watching a bit of a geopolitical split screen tonight because as this is happening, French President Emmanuel Macron is in Beijing right now. You see him getting off his plane there for a high-stakes meeting with the Chinese leader, President Xi Jinping. I want to bring in Aaron McLaughlin in California for us. A lot of attention on this meeting. It is wrapped up. We've heard from Speaker McCarthy. We've even heard from Nancy Pelosi, who'd had her own high-profile and, to China, controversial meeting in Taiwan last year.
Yeah, that's right, Hallie. And a lot of attention is being paid on the bipartisan nature of today's meeting. Today's meeting including some 18 U.S. lawmakers, 12 Republicans, 6 Democrats meeting with the Taiwanese president. During that press conference, House Speaker Kevin McCarthy outlining the next steps, sort of, from his perspective based on today's conversations, which he says includes continued arms sales to Taiwan and the timely, in his words, arrival of those sales, also emphasizing economic cooperation between the United States and Taiwan, specifically in the areas of technology and trade, and also emphasizing on the world stage those shared values. Tsai, for her part, she gave a brief statement today, standing side by side with the House Speaker, and she referenced Ronald Reagan. Remember, back in 1982, Ronald Reagan implemented the policy that is largely seen today to form the basis of the continued U.S.-Taiwanese relationship. Tsai quoted Reagan specifically. Take a listen.
President Reagan said it best. Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction.
All of this undoubtedly will be watched extraordinarily carefully by the Chinese government, which sees this meeting as a provocation.
Aaron McLaughlin live for us in Simi Valley, California. Aaron, thank you very much. Let's get you over to the 5 things our team thinks you should know about tonight. Number 1, Maryland's Attorney General is just releasing the results of a 5-year investigation into alleged abuse in the Baltimore Catholic Church. The AG said his office identified at least 600 victims of child sexual abuse over the past 80 years. The state report also accused church officials of decades of cover-ups. Number 2, a judge in Delaware says he's willing to force Rupert Murdoch and his son Lachlan to testify in that huge defamation case that Dominion Voting Systems is bringing against Fox News and Fox Corp. Fox Corp lawyers have argued Murdoch's age should prevent him from having to appear in court. Dominion's suing Fox for $1.6 billion for allegedly damaging its reputation after the 2020 election. Fox obviously is fighting back. Number 3, Twitter getting criticized today for labeling NPR's Twitter account as state affiliate media, which puts it in the same category as state-owned news agencies in Russia and China. NPR's president and CEO is calling that unacceptable. NPR does get some government money, but says it's editorially independent from any government agency or funding source. Number 4, Los Angeles Metro is trying out a controversial new public safety pilot program at subway stations. I want you to listen to this. That is the sound of an LA Metro station blasting classical music. As part of this program, the city's trying to stop people from loitering or from sleeping at subway stations. The plan also beefs up security and makes some changes to security cameras. LA's Metro said reported crime dropped 20% since this pilot started. Number 5, former Georgia candidate for governor Stacey Abrams is joining the faculty at Howard University. She'll take on an endowed chair focusing on race and black politics, according to a University of statement. Abrams is also set to lead a speaker series featuring guests with diverse perspectives. All right, have you heard about the fight today between 2 brands you're probably very familiar with? Chipotle suing Sweetgreen, because they say Sweetgreen is essentially ripping off its trademark with its new Chipotle chicken bowl. Here's the deal. Lawyers for Chipotle say, and I'm quoting here, that Sweetgreen's very similar and directly competitive bowl is an attempt to capitalize on the Chipotle brand and likely to confuse customers. Chipotle even wants all the money Sweetgreen's made so far from this bowl. Sweetgreen's, you know, putting out the meal. Look at these ads. When they announced the bowl last week, they said it wants to evolve Sweetgreen's brand beyond salads. It's now saying in a statement it is aware of the lawsuit, but Sweetgreen does not comment on pending litigation. NBC News legal analyst Danny Savalos is joining us now. And since this news came out today, Danny, it's raising some questions on trademark law, right? Like how much power a trademark has. I feel compelled to point out that Chipotle, the name of the burrito chain, it is also a pepper. You know what I mean? Like it's a piece of food, right? So it's not like when we talk about Chipotle every single time we're talking about the business. Help us understand if Chipotle has a case here.
Chipotle is a pepper, but Hallie, so too is Apple, a fruit. And Apple is one of the most recognizable brands in the world. Many moons ago, I was a trademark lawyer.
Wait a second, Danny, but my grocery store doesn't have to call apples, you know, round red fruits. Like they can still call it an apple.
Exactly right. And of course, Apple is not looking to occupy the space of actual Apple sales. And that's what I'm getting to about trademark law, intellectual property law, copyrights, trademarks. I could tell you about the law. I could tell you about the federal law that applies to them. But ultimately, in my experience handling these cases many years ago, they're all different. You really can't compare one to the other. And you look, you see Chipotle there. There are 2 things to understand. You have the word Chipotle, which is trademarked, but you also have the stylized mark, it's called. And that would be, for example, that distinctive cursive that you see in Coca-Cola or Google, when you go to Google and they have that rainbow-colored font. So recognizable that I suspect if I wrote another word in that stylized font, you would recognize it. And that's 2 prongs of what Chipotle is complaining about. Chipotle is complaining that if you put Chipotle in front of the product, you are creating a likelihood of confusion. They actually suggested to Sweetgreen's, why don't you do this instead? Just say, this is our salad or whatever the dish is, and it's Chipotle flavored, instead of putting the word in front and using a font or a typeface that Chipotle says is too similar to the typeface that they trademarked. They didn't just trademark the word Chipotle, they also trademarked the way, the artwork in the way it's written. So Chipotle's claim here is pretty straightforward. Look, we got a trademark in the word Chipotle. You can argue about whether that seems fair or not, but the trademark office gave it to us. We can now enforce it. So you, Sweetgreen's, needs to stop using our mark in connection with these services because they're creating a likelihood of confusion.
If you were repping Sweetgreen, how would you lay out their defense? And if Sweetgreen wins, what kind of repercussion would that have for trademark law? Like, could that set some sort of precedent here?
Yeah, well, Attorney Hallie Jackson just pointed out exactly the main thrust of my defense would be this. Look, Chipotle, yeah, you may have a trademark in the word Chipotle, but if our product includes the ingredient Chipotle, you can't prevent us from saying what is in our product or using a description of our product. And so, obviously, Chipotle's response is, well, you can use that description, but put it later in the description. In other words, here's our dish. It's got corn, beans, all this other stuff. Oh, and then it has Chipotle. And be careful that you don't use a font that is too close to the one that we trademarked and is one of the properties that we own, one of the brands that we own.
Real quick, if Chipotle does end up winning this, I believe they want the profits that Sweetgreen has made off of this bowl just in like the last week since it's been out. Is that likely?
It is possible. The thing about these trademark and copyright cases is that it often involves massive profits. You're looking to disgorge all the money that one party made from using your mark. And that's why a lot of these settle. The ones that go to trial, and you see it a lot in the copyright context, in music, when musicians allegedly steal music or the sound of certain songs and make it their own, you see that. They rarely go to trial because the stakes are so high. But when they do, they're multi-million-dollar verdict. So this is serious business.
It is serious business with a perhaps unserious question that people may be asking, which is, will Sweetgreen charge extra for guac in the Chipotle chicken bowls? I mean, who knows? We're going to see how this plays out. I don't expect. Do you have any? I don't expect you to have an answer for that.
No, I am a certified burrito expert, but this area, this particular dish, is outside my expertise, and frankly, I think guacamole is a major distraction, and I'm against it. So that may be controversial, but that's the way it is.
Gotta go. Danny Savalos, okay. We'll talk about that later. Thank you. Appreciate you. Who doesn't like guac? When we come back, a viral prank in Japan being called sushi terrorism has people, some of them thinking twice about eating at the country's popular conveyor belt restaurants. That's coming up in the Global. We are seeing kids walk out of schools across the country tonight, demanding lawmakers do something to change gun laws after the killings of 3 9-year-olds and 3 school staffers at the Covenant School in Nashville. Take a look here on screen. Tampa, Boston, Denver, and in Tennessee, in Johnson City, you have these walkouts with chants of protect our kids. But will any changes to gun laws actually happen in Tennessee? Democrats there hope so. They've introduced some new bills in just the last couple of hours, including one ban on high-capacity magazines and bump stocks and universal background checks. But they say that is actually not what's on the mind of Republicans right now.
People are begging for us to do something across the state. And instead of us having meaningful conversations, we've been distracted with an expulsion of some of our members.
He's talking about a vote tomorrow by Republicans to expel 3 Democratic lawmakers, potentially as soon as tomorrow, for speaking up in support of some of these protesters who came into the state capitol demonstrating to try to get the state's gun laws changed. But in those pictures you just saw, you may have also seen some people carrying signs saying justice for the Tennessee 3. These are the Tennessee 3, so-called, here on your screen here, including State Representative Gloria Johnson, which brings us to tonight's Newsmaker, where we go one-on-one with the people making headlines on the issues we're talking about. Representative Johnson is joining us now. She represents a district that includes Knoxville. Thank you so much for being with us tonight.
Oh, thanks for having it. And it's an important story to share, and we appreciate that.
Well, here we are 24 hours away, less than that, actually, on this vote that could essentially kick you out of the Tennessee State House, the position that you got when you were obviously voted into it. Republicans have a 75-24 majority. It doesn't seem like the numbers are on your side, but how do you think it's going to go tomorrow? What are you anticipating?
Well, they definitely have the votes. If they're going to bring it forward, I am ready. We are all ready to state our case in the public view, with all Tennesseans watching. We came here, our voters sent us here to lift up their voice, a voice that is not heard quite often in the state house due to a Republican supermajority. We are here to represent those that are in our district and speak up for the voices of Tennessee that are crying out for an answer to the issue, to the problem of gun violence, especially after we lost Evelyn, Hallie, William, Cynthia, Catherine, and Mike. We have got to do something. They do a lot of thoughts and prayers here, but no action. And when we tried to stand up to talk about this, the first action they took was not to talk about ending gun violence, but to remove or expel the members who were trying to bring this issue to the table.
Now, the Republicans, and I just want to ask something. You said if they bring this tomorrow. I think they're planning to. Have you heard anything differently in the last couple hours?
They are planning to. You know, I mean, I haven't heard anything differently. They don't have to bring the resolution forward, but I think they will.
Well, let me explain to people, because the Republicans are saying here, including the Speaker of the House in the state of Tennessee, Cameron Sexton, that you and these other two lawmakers, you broke the rules. He says you broke the rules by coming onto the House floor to do this protest here, and says he's going to vote to expel you. He was on Fox News today. I want to play for you what the House Speaker said.
In workplace, you have rules that you break. Sometimes those rules put a letter in your file. Sometimes the rules that you break have you get fired. In this instance, this rises to the level, I believe, of their actions on the House floor to be expelled.
He is saying that you broke the rules, so you got to get fired, essentially, or kicked out. Explain why you don't see it that way.
Well, that incident was one incident in the entire day where there was a skirmish between a couple of teenagers and the highway patrol. That had zero to do what was happening on the House floor. We were sitting at our desk. We were tired of the fact that we were not allowed to welcome the protesters, to talk about, we hear them, we see them, and we care about this issue, and we're going to talk about it as a legislative body. We wanted them to know that. We were not allowed to bring that up on the House floor. My colleagues were gaveled down. I was not called on when I raised my hand. And so we decided between bills, we would walk to the well and recognize the protesters who had come there, the issue that they cared about, and the fact that there are many of us in that room that wanted to talk about those issues. When the Democrats walked onto the House floor that morning, we stopped, we talked to people. I talked to mothers who cried about dropping their kids off that morning because they were concerned about their safety. And we talked to those people as we walked through. And as my colleagues across the aisle passed through the protesters, they didn't even make eye contact. They didn't even recognize that they were standing there, what they were there for. We wanted to welcome. We have something at the beginning of session called welcoming and honoring. We skipped over that, and we were not able to welcome or honor those folks there. And so we decided to walk to the floor.
You're making the point that you felt like this was a justified, essentially, protest for the protesters who had showed up in the State House here. But I want to ask you before we run out of time about the issue underlying all this, which is the potential for any changes to Tennessee's gun laws in the first place. In an interview with your local paper, I think you said that Republicans, some of them that you're speaking with, are open to some changes. We also know that the state's governor, Bill Lee, has not suggested publicly so far that he's interested in any new changes to the state's gun laws here. Realistically, what are the chances something will change?
Well, who knows? We are willing to come to the table. My colleagues are ready to come to the table. I've carried red flag laws twice before and have one ready for next session. I hope that they will come to the table. I'll hope they listen to the voters.
State Representative Gloria Johnson from Tennessee, thank you. We will be watching and covering what happens at the Tennessee State House tomorrow right here on this show on NBC News Now. Thank you. Coming up, outrage and protests in Iran still more than 6 months after Mahsa Amini's death in police custody. How one activist and comedian is trying to make sure people keep paying attention to this story. Stay with us. So tonight, the outrage and protests in Iran may have fallen out of the headlines lately, but they are still going on as more women defy authorities by not complying with the country's strict dress code. Some of them still facing attacks, crackdowns from the government, and arrests. Like these two women you're about to see. They were attacked by a man with yogurt because they weren't wearing hijabs. And since the death of Mahsa Amini, the 22-year-old who died in police custody, that's that yogurt moment right there. Since the death of the 22-year-old who died in police custody back in September, Mahsa Amini, we've seen these unprecedented protests across Iran. More than 20,000 people have been arrested. More than 500 people have been killed. I want to bring in somebody who knows about a lot of this. Iranian comedian, actor, and activist, Maz Jobrani. His new comedy special, The Birds and the Bees, is out on YouTube right now. Thank you so much for being with us tonight.
Thank you for having me, Hallie. How are you?
I'm okay. I'm glad to be talking with you. We've been looking forward to this because the issue of these protests in Iran, of the way that these demonstrations have been developing, is so important. And I'm just going to be honest with you. It doesn't always end up making like the national nightly news, right? Even though it is still a huge and important issue. Your own activism picked up, I think, after the death of Mahsa Amini. You've talked about that after she died in police custody last year. Talk about that.
Absolutely. You know, I'm a stand-up comedian, and if you looked at any of my social media before the killing of Mahsa Amini, it was all about, you know, comedy. And then once that happened, once they, Mahsa Amini, who was this young 22-year-old lady who was walking in the streets of Iran, and her hair was a little bit out of her hijab, and the morality police killed her, those protests broke out, and my Instagram page from then on had become a page of an activist. I was trying to constantly bring attention to and help amplify the voice of the people of Iran who were fighting for their freedoms. And it was a women's-led movement, as we know, and it continues. And the one way that I was trying to help explain to Americans, I was saying that Iran is not just fighting for themselves. Iranians are fighting for democracy for the world, because if you think about it, when the Islamic Republic came into power after the Islamic Revolution, the first people they went after were women. They took away women's rights, and then they would go after the LGBTQ community, then minority, religious minorities. And when we're in America and we say, well, that doesn't pertain to us, I remind people just last year, a woman's right to choose was taken away. And there's a lot of talk you hear of then going after LGBTQ rights and other rights, as we see all the time. So we really need to pay attention to a place like Iran and try to support the people of Iran in their pursuit for freedom.
I thought it was interesting that you've talked about how now your audiences applaud you in light of what is happening in Iran when you talk about this, when you say that you are, you know, from Iran, an Iranian comedian here. I can't imagine that was always the case for you, right? How much of a shift has that been?
You know, Hallie, I came to the U.S. late 1978, and then quickly the hostage crisis happened. And from then on, I was constantly faced with, you know, bullying or negative images of Iranians. The movie Not Without My Daughter, the Iran-Contra hearings, anytime, any place you would name it, we were always getting negative stereotypes. Now, what happened was a lot of people, when the protests happened last year in Iran, people were saying, is it a protest? Is it a revolution? And I was trying to explain to people the revolution is already happened, in that we, or the women of Iran, I should say, helped change the hearts and minds of Americans. I would do shows at the Comedy Store in front of an American audience, and I would mention I'm from Iran. And whereas in the past, it would either get a neutral or a negative reaction, it was getting applause from an American audience. So you are absolutely right. The movement last year definitely has already helped change the image of the Iranian people. Because one thing I heard that I will repeat, it's not the Islamic Republic of Iran, it's the Islamic Republic versus Iran. It's the people of Iran against their government.
And that has been the consequences of those demonstrations that you're talking about are incredibly intense. They are dangerous. There are reports that protesters, kids as young as 12, are getting beaten by police. We saw that, you remember, wave of poisonings of schoolgirls across the country. This is serious and maybe even deadly stuff. It has been deadly, as we have seen. And here you are as a comedian coming in, and I think people might think, wait, is that incongruous to have sort of comedy playing a part in this? Comedy can be and often is commentary, too. And I wonder how you see the power of what you do as a comedian to shine a spotlight here.
Absolutely. Listen, as a comedian, I've always, as an Iranian American in America, I've always talked about issues that pertain to my community. So early on, after September 11th, I was talking a lot about a lot of the issues where there was discrimination against people from an Iranian American background, Arab background, Muslim background. And now in this case, it is my opportunity to bring to the forefront and to the attention of my American audience this struggle that's going on for the people of Iran And I try to do that as much as I can. And I always say in my show, you always end up with, it's a comedy show, so you do end up with comedy, but the punchline is never the victims. The punchline is always either the people who are the hypocrites in this case, which would be the government of Iran in this case, or it's self-deprecating material. But I do think that comedy, I heard one time D.L. Hughley, he said, comedy is like giving people their medicine, but in orange juice.
I think that's super interesting. Sometimes in news we talk about, it's broccoli and the mashed potatoes, same kind of concept, I think. Maz Jobrani, thank you so much for being with us tonight. Your new comedy special, want to make sure people know The Birds and the Bees. It is out on YouTube right now. Maz, thank you. NBC News covers hundreds of international stories every day, and because you couldn't possibly read or watch or listen to them all, our foreign desk has done it for you. Here's some of what they're watching in a new segment we call The Global. In Italy, the former prime minister there, Silvio Berlusconi, is in intensive care at a hospital in Milan, according to the country's foreign minister. He's apparently alert and speaking. He was prime minister 4 times. Berlusconi has recently had some health problems and just came out of the hospital before this time last week. In Japan, police have arrested 2 people who posted a video online showing one of them putting chopsticks into a restaurant's communal ginger container. It happened at a famous beef bowl chain. If convicted, they could go to prison and be fined. It's apparently not an isolated thing. There have been a bunch of gross pranks at sushi chains, like those conveyor belt chains. It's being called sushi terrorism. And out of Lithuania, take a look at this giant Easter egg at the airport in the capital. Can you guess what it's made of? Like 1,000 knives, lighters, scissors, all the things people had to leave at security checkpoints there before boarding. The airport worker who made the egg says it's intended to be educational. Don't bring that stuff through security. Still to come, why Bud Light is getting some backlash now for its new partnership, and why a lot of people in the LGBTQ plus community are watching it. Stay with us. Today, Bud Light facing some backlash over its partnership with a trans influencer. Take a look. There's a video posted by Kid Rock that has more than 1 million views, hundreds of comments praising him for shooting at cases of Bud Light. Other videos posted online show people like dumping their Bud Light into trash bins and down sinks, even destroying cans of the beer. Why? Well, Bud Light had teamed up with trans influencer Dylan Mulvaney during the NCAA's March Madness college basketball tournament. And while March Madness has officially wrapped up by now, it seems like the response to this partnership just seems to be getting more and more intense. Jay Valle, who's been following this story, is here with us now. Explain this. Explain the timeline here.
Well, after Dylan posted that, Hallie, thank you for having me, first of all. But, after Dylan posted this video, I mean, a lot of backlash came mostly from conservatives. And then when you have those individuals and with larger platforms like Kid Rock, you can imagine the conversation ignited even more. But Dylan Mulvaney is no stranger to the backlash from conservatives who, she has 10 million followers on TikTok, and she's a trans woman who has documented her experience for over a year now. I assume now that Dylan received backlash on a daily basis, so she did not respond to our request for comment.
What are we hearing from Bud Light on this?
Yeah, Bud Light, the last 48 hours, as these videos have thousands of views, they did not ignore what conversations were being sparked, and Bud Light sent a statement, actually. Anheuser-Busch works with hundreds of influencers across their brands, and many ways to authentically connect with their audiences across various demographics is to partner with these influencers. So, as of this point, these videos, again, continuing to flow in, and that backlash is pretty intense there, as, that Kid Rock video has over 1 million views now.
Jay Valle, thank you very much for that breakdown. We'll read more about it, I know, in your postings for NBCnews.com. Your stories there. Appreciate it. That does it for us this hour. We're going to have more for you here tomorrow. Of course, same time, same place. Thank you, as always, for being with us right here on NBC News Now. Top story picks up right now.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.